Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. Yesterday, it all went crazier again. Oh my God. Just when you think the world can't get any crazier, so it does get crazier, doesn't it? So it's absolute chaos here in Spain yesterday. Um, it's like a surreal dream. Anyway, as you can see, I'm here live now, so it's all back on again now, sort of, but we're all like crossing our fingers that it's not going to happen again. So I'm going to tell you about my day yesterday, which was terrible, but it actually wasn't as bad as probably a lot of people's day, and I have to keep thinking that. But oh my God, this morning, the gratefulness for just silly things like being able to put your kettle on and have your coffee, being able to put your internet on, put your computer on, see what's happening in the world, just putting a light on. I mean, gosh, you do not realize, do you, how vital electricity is until it's gone and you haven't got it, and for a long period of time, and the chaos that ensues. So I'm going to tell you about my day yesterday, which, as I say, won't be as bad as some people's days, but it was bad enough, put it this way. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. Also, I missed all you guys as well. You know, I had things planned to do yesterday, but you know what? God laughs at those who make plans, don't they? So yeah, all my plans yesterday just went out the window. But as I say, definitely not as bad as some people. So I just want to say thank you for being there. So I really missed sort of coming on. And because it's funny when all that's going on, the thing I would have loved to have done is come on live and talk about it, but couldn't because there's no internet. There's nothing. God, it's really weird. How did we ever cope without internet? You know, just how did we ever cope? Well, say cope, we cope because we didn't know any different. But there's no going back that now, is there? You know, to have to go back now in this internet world that we live in. It'd be hard, wouldn't it? Even for someone like me who remembers it from before. But, you know, those that have grown up with internet have never known anything else. That is their reality. That is life. Anyway, so thank you for watching, for liking, subscribing, being members especially. Or those of you who've bought me a Ko-fi, PayPal'd me, wrote me a song, sent a super chat, sent me a nice email. And I sort of think I'm more or less caught up with my emails now. But yeah, it's so nice. Sometimes you just send me emails to let me know how you're doing, or if you haven't been on the chat for a while, or, you know, with what's happening in your lives. And of course, people send me emails in confidence, and I'm very sort of, that makes me feel really good that people know that they can confide in me. Anything anybody tells me by email will never make its way on here unless they want it to. Of course, sometimes people send me emails and they want me to talk about it. It's something. And then other times they just maybe need somebody to talk to about it, and they choose to talk to me, which I think is really sweet, because sometimes it's difficult to talk to people who are close to you. Sometimes they're the problem apart from anything else. So yeah, it's nice that people feel that they're, you know, sometimes people vent in an email, and that's great, you know, get it out. So yeah, thank you to everyone. I really, really appreciate everything. And you know, it's funny when yesterday, the one thing when you know, you've got no internet, you've got no, all those things that we normally do, which are time wasting things, really. I mean, that's something you realize, because you think, God, what, you know, years ago when we didn't have all these things, what did you do with your days? You probably did more constructive things. I don't know. But you certainly, you know, the internet can be a time waster. That's why I quite like podcasts and things. I like to put things on in the background so that I can just carry on. I prefer it to the telly, because the telly you have to really sit down and watch, don't you? Whereas I think a good thing about the internet is YouTube, because you can just put it on and listen to it. You don't always have to sit and watch it. It's not always things that you have to look at, or suddenly something, you'll be doing something, you're listening to a podcast, and then you realize that there's a photo or a video going on. You might look at it then, but you don't have to look at it all the time. You can put it on in the background, and that's good, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, thank you. So let me say hello to lurkers, and of course the lurkers, those who are watching on Replay Crew. And now I'm going to say hello to those of you that are brave enough to come into the chat. Hi Daniel, morning. Hi Maria. Hi Kaz. Yes. Hi Julie. How are you, Julie? Hi Rini. Because of course Julie is in Spain as well. Well, you're in Madrid, aren't you? They had it worse because that's the capital. So okay, so let's start at the beginning. You don't know where to start with this. So yesterday all seemed like a Monday of all days. All seemed like a normal day. I had classes in the morning, and luckily there weren't the ones in the morning. There weren't internet classes. I actually had a student in the classroom downstairs, and I had all the plans for what I was going to do after I'd finished class. I had classes later that were internet classes. Had the day planned out. At some point in between, I had to take my son to work, have lunch and stuff like that. Now, luckily for me, I'd actually been quite forward thinking. And I was thinking, when I finished my class in the morning at 1, I put baked potato in the oven. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but thank God. I put a baked potato in the oven, and I thought, for lunch I'll have baked potato with tuna. And so I put it in the oven while I was actually in class, so it'd be ready for when I finished class at 1 o'clock. So around about, I can't remember exactly what time it was, but it was round about 12:30, I think. Everything went at 12:15, 12:30. Everything just went off. Honest God, it was the weirdest thing, because it was like sometimes electricity does go off here just for a minute or whatever, and you hear this beep beep as it's trying to come back on, again. But there was none of that. It was just like, it was just like this. You knew when it went off, it was like a permanent thing. It just sounded like it. So, of course, I, like probably a lot of people, started thinking, have I paid my bill? Have I paid my bill? Now, I'd actually paid my electricity bill the day before on the Sunday, on the internet. But then I started thinking, did I pay the right bill? Because, you think all sorts of things, don't you? I'm thinking maybe I paid the wrong thing. And, but I couldn't check it. Because there's no electricity. So you're thinking, did I pay my bill? But you can't check if you paid your bill. So, of course, because the electricity's gone off everywhere, the electricity's gone off. So that means your internet's down, the phone's down, everything's connected to the electricity. So, there's just nothing you can do. Once you sort of realise that, anyway, I could have my lunch. I had my baked potato because my baked potato was ready. So I had my baked potato and tuna. That was nice. And just waiting for it to come back on, because sometimes it does go off, though not normally for longer than 5 minutes or whatever. So anyway, we had to finish our class off in the dark. Luckily, I could open the garage door, so we got some light coming in. And I'm sort of apologising to my student. Well, of course, when he got home, he would have realised he had no electricity either. So it was just like, okay, just wait for it to come back on. But you couldn't find out, like, if there was I couldn't ring Iberdrola, couldn't put the telly on, I couldn't get the news up on the internet. It's a really weird feeling, this sort of like total stone wall of information. So I relied, as always, on my neighbours who always know what's going on one way or another. So I'm listening out for them. And then next minute, they're all out in the street talking about it. Hi, David. So I heard them saying, I heard one neighbour shouting over to another, Tienes luz, have you got electricity? So that's when I knew it wasn't just me, that other people didn't have electricity as well. And also to know then that the Spanish will sort it out one way or another. They'll find a way to get through to Iberdrola or, whatever, because anyway, so I heard one of them saying to the other one, ring them, meaning Iberdrola. So I thought, oh, they'll get it sorted. So sort of settled down and I'm thinking, right, what we're going to... So I started doing a bit of cleaning. I mean, my house has got a few things cleaned because we had water, of course. So at least we had water. No hot water. Well, once the tank ran out of hot water, we didn't have any hot water. And then I'm thinking, so my son was due to get up and I'm thinking, oh, please let it come back on before he gets up because, he's like glued to his phone like most people are. Anyway, it wasn't on by the time he got up and then he got ready for work. So I took him to work. Of course, I've got no petrol. Hardly any petrol. I was due to get I was going to, after I'd taken my son to work yesterday, that was on my list of things to do, get petrol. I literally had one bar of that shows on the thing. So I'm thinking, so this is something that I've learned. Don't let your petrol go down because all the petrol stations, of course, because couldn't take card payments or maybe some of them didn't seem to have backup generators. So most of the petrol stations were closed. I'm running on fumes. Took my son to work. Now, there is a petrol station near where he works, like attached to a commercial centre. Now, the commercial centre was closed, but the petrol station was open, but the queues, oh my God. So there's just queues coming out. So we couldn't go before, he had to get to work. And then I thought in my infinite wisdom, I'll go to a petrol station on the way home that's actually on the way rather than go back out of my way again to this petrol station. And of course, because the queues were so big anyway. Well, that was a mistake because all the petrol stations that were on my way home were closed. There were police everywhere. It was really quite scary. It reminded me of COVID days. When it was sort of so desolate everywhere and police that, all you ever saw during COVID when you did venture out were police, really. And anyway, I went home and I thought I'd be back on in a minute. So by then, on the way to work, my son had a brief signal on his phone because our phones weren't working, nothing was working. He said, I've got data. And then he managed to look to see what had happened and we could see, the news that there'd been this power outage through the whole of Spain. And because Portugal relies on Spain for its electricity, apparently that's why it affected Portugal so badly as well. And it was like chaos. Can you imagine being at the airport or being on a train? People were having to get off trains, finish their walk, subways, if you were in a hospital, and surely a hospital would have backup generators, I don't know, but just absolute chaos. So anyway, I thought I'll just come home. I went to the supermarket. I thought I'll just pop to the supermarket on the way home. Can you imagine what the supermarket was like? Absolutely packed. People go into this panic mode, don't they? Maybe that's what you should do. But I only needed like 2 things or whatever. So I thought, I'm not queuing up in that. I actually considered just taking the stuff. Leaving the money on the till and just going through and taking it because the queues in my local Aldi. Oh my God. Anyway, so I thought it's not worth going to another supermarket. They'll all be the same. They'll all be the same. So I just came home and tried to chill out for a bit. So, of course, couldn't do my classes, so because they were internet classes that I had in the afternoon, so I've lost that. Just anyway, I don't know if we'll ever get any compensation, but that's quite a lot of money that you lose. I won't be the only person, obviously, who's lost money. When I think about all the shops having to shut and everything, that would have been a bad day for everyone financially as well. And then I'm sort of waiting, and it's not coming back on, and I can't even put the telly on and check the news. So remember, we've talked about prepping, and of course I was totally unorganized. I've got a battery-powered radio, but the batteries that I put in it, they didn't work, so they're obviously too old or whatever. So I thought, put my radio on. No. So the batteries wouldn't work anyway. So I presume it's the batteries are too old or whatever. So that was a total, nightmare. All the food went off in the freezer, of course. So there's another load of, things that you've got to replace. Anyway, so I was sat there and I'm thinking, I haven't even got any alcohol. Well, I couldn't have any alcohol because I had to go back and pick my son up, but I didn't have any anyway. So I'm thinking, I need to get to the supermarket at some point. But I couldn't. And then I'm worrying about the petrol, and I'm thinking, have I got enough petrol even to go and pick my son up and bring us home? If the petrol stations still aren't open, it's like it was a chaos. It was absolute chaos. Yeah, never did my main thing. Did you have any alcohol? No, not then. I did later. But hi, Paul. Didn't do my doomsday bag. In fact, my prepping has been absolutely crap. Anyway, one good thing was we did have cash, or my son had cash. So, for once, it's like he's helping me out because I didn't have any cash at all. So he gave me €50 and he said, get some petrol at some point. And, that was sort of the idea of it. So I had €50 in cash. But, €50 isn't going to help you when you can't find a petrol station that's open. So as I was sat here, I was thinking, I'm not driving off on my own because I wasn't due to pick him up till 10:30 that evening. And I'm thinking, I'm not driving on my own in the dark, to go and pick him up because it would have been dark by then. It's going dark at the moment, about 9 o'clock-ish. So I'm thinking, no, I'm going to go now. And I'd rather sit there for 2 hours rather than, drive on my own in the dark with hardly any petrol. So that's what I did. So I loaded up my 2 dogs and off we went at round about 8 o'clock. Maybe a little bit before in the evening, and went to the restaurant where my son's working. And I said to him, by now I'm practically hysterical over the petrol. So if I would have had petrol, I wouldn't have been panicking. We had some food in, like, that you didn't need to cook, not much, but, tuna and salad and wraps and things like that. So that wasn't so much a problem. I didn't have any alcohol, but my son had some. So, because he's drinking now, so which is great. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. But, for years, he just didn't drink. He never touched alcohol. But he does now. So there was some alcohol in, but it was his really. But he would have, we would have shared that if push came to shove. So, but it's the petrol thing. So by now, I haven't even got 1 bar on my petrol thing. The last bar has gone. I'm literally running on fumes. And I'm thinking, what the hell? How the hell are we going to get home? What if we run out of petrol on the way home? It was a disaster. So anyway, by the time I get to the restaurant, I'm hysterical. He's working, of course. Now, they had initially said to him to finish early at 8:30, and he'd sent me a message, but because it was the electric came on. What was really weird about this electrical outage is the electric came on where he was, which isn't that far away from here. It's only about 15 minutes in the car. Came on there, but it still wasn't on here in my pueblo. So he'd sent me a message to say, oh, they're finishing me at 8:30. And then he'd actually sent me another message to say, oh, no, that's cancelled now because the electricity came back on. So by the time I got there, I'm hysterical. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I said, look, now the thing is the petrol station that we'd seen that was open earlier, it is nearby, but it's not that nearby. Do you know, it would have, I'm thinking, well, if I go to that petrol station and it's not open, that's more petrol that I've wasted, and that might be just that bit of petrol that we need to get home. So he says to me, oh, you're going to have to walk up there and make sure it's open. I said, I can't walk up there because it's a long walk, you know, I mean, not massive, but it's probably 30. If you walk right to the petrol station, it'd be 30 minutes walking and 30 minutes back, of course. So I said, oh no, I'll go up in the car. And he said, well, what if it's not open? What are you going to do? Oh, so it was a nightmare. So anyway, in the end, I got my dogs out the car and off we trotted to the shopping centre to see if the petrol station was open. And, oh God, you know what? That was because bear in mind as well, I'd been doing quite a lot of walking all day because there was nothing else to do. So I'd been walking around the house and cleaning. I was shattered. Wasn't as if, you know, I hadn't done any exercise that day or done anything physical. I was already knackered. And then I've got to do a half an hour walk up there, half an hour walk back. I still haven't recovered. My back's killing me. My knees, you know, I really felt my age. And then poor little dogs, they were like, oh, what's going on? What are you dragging us up here for? And why are we on? Anyway, I walked sort of more or less. I couldn't walk right up to the petrol station because that was even further. I saw that the supermarket was open. Because when we'd gone past, not the supermarket, the shopping centre, when we'd gone past earlier, all the shutters were down. To the parking spaces, so that one of them, it was up, so it was like you could drive in it to park. So once I saw that, I thought, well, if the parking spaces are open, then the petrol station's going to be open. So I walked back, trotted back, got the dogs in the car, then drove up there to the petrol station, which was empty. Completely empty this time, you know, whereas it had been packed earlier. But there were police there filling up. There were police everywhere. One thing Spain is never short of is police. You could never complain about, you don't ever see a policeman in Spain. There are police everywhere. Whatever else you might complain about, but they are. It does make you feel safer when there's police everywhere, as long as you're not doing anything bad, of course. So I put in not a full tank, but 3/4 of a tank of petrol. And I was chatting to the guy there in the thing. This poor guy's had a terrible day as well because so many petrol stations were closed. Of course, everyone was going to that petrol station, which was one of the only ones that were open. So he'd not stopped all day, and it was 10 o'clock. Things tend to close here, so he was not far off by then. I think by now it was about 9 o'clock. So then I'm thinking, right, got the petrol. Oh, I can't even tell you how that felt. I'd been terrified of running out of petrol somewhere, because you can imagine trying to get somebody out when all this chaos is going on. Well, I couldn't even phone anybody anyway. You know, in Spain, you have on your car, you have your insurance and it includes recovery. But how would I get through to anyone? How would I get through to anyone? You could imagine they were probably really busy. So we do need to become Amish, Maria. We do. David, just what you're saying, no, that's exactly how it is. That's exactly how it is. He earns more money than me and you have to drag it out of him. But anyway. It's nice to have it the other way, like, where I can he can help me out when I need it. But so I've got a tank full of petrol. I'm happy. And then so I went back to the restaurant. I said, "What time are you finishing?" He said, "Oh, it'll be normal time, which is 10:30." So I've got an hour to waste, at least an hour. At 10 he was expecting to finish. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to go and try and I'm going to go to Aldi and to see if it's, if I can get some alcohol, basically." So he asked for a bottle of Coke or something to go with the alcohol he had at home. And I thought, oh no, I'll go back to the supermarket in that shopping centre because, obviously the shopping centre was open. So I'll go in there. Oh my God. So as I'm going in, there's a security guard at the parking thing. And he says, "Oh, only only the supermarket is open. All the other shops are closed." I said, "Oh, that's fine. That's what I need, the supermarket." So in I go. It was empty. It just so reminded me of COVID. It's eerie. When you go in those shopping centres, in the car parks, there's nobody in there. Nobody. No other cars, or maybe the odd one. Nobody walking around. Normally there's all people walking in your way and what have you. But yeah, it was just eerie. So I parked up right near the escalator that takes you up to the supermarket. Literally ran up the escalator. Honestly, I don't know where I got that after all that walking I'd done. I don't know. It just shows you can find energy from somewhere if you need it. Ran up the escalator because how many true crime videos I've seen, and things happen in shopping centre car parks when they're desolate like that. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get mugged or worse. And so I'm running up the escalator. There's nobody around. I'm dying to go to the loo. So I have to go in the loos. There's nobody in the loos. These massive sort of cubicles, loads of cubicles, nobody in there. And I'm thinking, oh God, what if there was just one nutter in here? Well, there was me, but apart from me, what if there was just one nutcase in here or whatever, or they thought they would mug me, or it was really, really scary. Joking apart, it was scary. I was absolutely terrified because it's dark by now as well, and not all the lights are on in this shopping centre. It was really spooky. I should have taken a video. I could have taken a video, probably, couldn't I? I couldn't have shared it live or anything, but I should have taken a video. But I was I just wanted to get out there. Anyway, I went into the supermarket. There's me and about 4 other people in this massive supermarket, one of these hypermarkets. And the staff are all just sort of hanging around in that. I literally got a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of Coke. That was it. And then went to they were just about closing. So it's coming, I think it was about 9:45 by now. And I got that, and then I legged it back down to the. In fact, I was seriously considering that because I saw a security guard, and I was going to ask him, could he walk me to my car? That's how vulnerable I felt because it was so quiet. Honestly, it's really, I moan about people. I hate it when I go to the supermarket or to the shopping centre and there's too many people. But I think too many people is better than no people whatsoever. It's like, oh God, really, really eerie. So legged it down, trying to get the keys out of the car. It was like something off a film, not always when you're trying to rush. I couldn't find my keys in my bag and I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, so finally, I'll go off back to the restaurant then. So then he ends up finishing later than expected. So I'm waiting for ages, but by now, I'm literally falling asleep in the car because my bones are aching from all the walking. My back's killing me. I just want to go home, and we're hoping that the electricity was on in the area where he works, or most of it anyway. It wasn't all on. It was very dark. There was a lot of street lights that weren't on. We were hoping that it would be on when we got home. Nah. So we get home. I think ours is, there's so much electricity being put on, but our Pueblo, no. nothing's back on. So we've come in, we've lit the candles. I've used all my candles. Oh God, used all my candles, sort of trying to rustle up some food. So one thing that I did learn as well, yeah, you're right, David, a petrol can would be good to keep it stored. Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, the thing is, when something like this happens, you think, oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You know, I've prepped nothing really. Now, luckily, I hide food around the house because, you know, number one son, he does like to eat. So, and obviously the food that I hide around the house is food that doesn't need to go in the fridge. So I did have some cans of tuna, wraps, you know, tortilla wraps, things like that. And we had sort of general salad in and what have you. So actually, it was really quite a nice dinner that we had. We say dinner, it was about 11 o'clock at night. We sat down, we had so my son said, oh my God, I'm so bored. I'm going to have to talk to you. So he was funny really, because of course normally he'd get home from work, he'd cook himself something to eat and he'd be off in his room or whatever, watching, you know, playing a game on the computer or, you know, looking at his internet or whatever he does. But you know, because he couldn't do that. So it was actually, that bit was actually quite nice. So I made these wraps and everything and we sat down and we had to talk to each other. So that's it. When your internet goes off, you've actually got to talk to each other. You know, do you remember that when we used to talk to each other, people weren't just like looking at the phones. And in fact, he was so bored, he was even making shadows on the wall. Did you ever used to do that? So I was telling him like about the people of my age will remember the strikes, you know, in the UK when. So I was thinking, what were those strikes? Do you remember when we were all playing games and candlelight? I was only a little girl, a very little girl, but I couldn't remember exactly when they were. They would be in the 70s. Wouldn't they? And what was it? Was that an electric? Why did we have no electric? Oh, the Winter of Discontent, that was it. So do you remember the Winter of Discontent between late September and 1978 and February 1979? Gosh, so I thought I was younger than that, obviously. I thought I was a little girl, but I wasn't. I was a teenager then. You know, a young teenager. So it was when the electric. Let's have a look. Miners' strike, dockers' strike. Why did we have no electricity? This was something. Was it a strike? I don't know if it was a strike when we had no electricity. Because it was the blackouts. I don't know what it was. Can't remember. Oh, the 3-day week. That was it. The 3-day week. So the 3-day week was one of several measures introduced in the United Kingdom in 1970. That sounds more like it, because I thought I was younger than a teenager. 1973, 1974, by Edward Heath. Oh, you might know he had something to do with it, to conserve electricity due to industrial action by coal miners and railway workers. Yeah, you can bet he didn't go without any electricity, or anybody else, you know, even here, I notice there's a few sort of houses near me where people live who've got quite a lot of money. They've all got generators, so we had to put up with all the generators, the noise of the generators. So yeah, do you remember this? Do any of you? Hi, Hannah. Yeah. Let me just show this on Wikipedia. So this is just what it was like. It's quite nice in a way. I mean, I wouldn't want it to go on and on, but it was sort of quite sweet because we did sit there and talk to each other. And we didn't. I have got board games and things like from years ago that we used to play at Christmas. I've never got rid of them, but they've not been used for ages. We didn't go that far, but I remember when I was a kid, we did. That's what we would do. We were playing games by candlelight. God, I'd forgotten about this. So from the 1st of January 1974, commercial users of electricity were limited to 3 specified consecutive days consumption each week. God, when you think about it, that's terrible, really, isn't it? And prohibited from working longer hours on these days. Services that were deemed essential, e.g. hospitals, data centres, supermarkets and newspaper printing presses. Oh yeah, you got to spread the media. Yeah, you got to spread the propaganda. Were exempt. Television companies were required to cease broadcasting at 10:30 to conserve electricity, though this restriction was dropped after a general election was called, and the 3-day week restrictions were lifted on the 7th of March 1974. Now, that even tell me that's not like Russia. You know, we always people moan, you know, they're all saying, oh, Russia's this and Russia's that. Imagine that. 3 days a week, you can only 3 days a week you can have your electricity on. What? I mean, how on earth that, you know, Britain is like, they call it a free country. Is it a free country? Anyway, funnily enough, the measure was a major disaster for the Heath government, contributing to the losses in both the February election and the subsequent October election. And following the losses, so it's his fault about Margaret Thatcher as well. Margaret Thatcher challenged Heath to a leadership contest and subsequently won. So I think you can't do that. Do you imagine the uproar? Say, no, you can only use your electric 3 days a week. I mean, even, you know, you could see it the other way around. Like if you said, oh, you can use your electricity 6 days a week, but just one day you can't use it or something. But to say you can only use it, you can only use it for 3 days out of a 7-day week. How did they even get that through Parliament? Gosh, because in the 1970s, most of the UK's electricity was produced by coal-burning power stations. Anyway, so there you go. I was trying to tell him about that, but I couldn't remember all the details of it. Yeah. Gosh, crazy, isn't it, really? Hey, Claire. Yeah, trying to make tea and stuff. Because the kettle, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but how many times we went to put the kettle on? Oh, just have a tea or a coffee. Oh, can't put the kettle on. Oh, I'll boil up a pan of water. Oh, can't do that either. Just, you know, it's funny. It's the little things that you miss. Anyway, luckily we had water. So, you know, we had frappe coffees in the daytime. When my son got up, that's what he had, a cold coffee with ice. And a lot of Spanish people drink coffee like that. So anyway, so another thing that I learn is when I talk about bloody prepping and getting stuff in, I'd have to have a lot of stuff in. So, you know, you took my son, you know, he's 6'5" and he's sort of in his late 20s. He eats a lot. Of course he does. He has to. And he's, you know, he's, you know, he needs it. He's been working all day as well. So, but one thing I learned was I need to get a lot of prepping things in. So this is one night, okay, one night that we didn't have electricity. And I made those wraps, which were lovely. Then he had sandwiches, similar sandwiches. Yeah, he had left a packet of crisps out. That went. And then when the electricity came on, he had his normal, what he would have had to eat. So, you know, one thing I've realised, to talk about prepping, needs to get a lot of things in for prepping, because if that would have gone on, a couple of days, I think by the second day, that's it, we would have had no food left. Because of course he was bored as well. The thing is, and you do, don't you? You eat more when you're bored. If you can't, do anything else, like you'll eat or you'll drink or smoke if you're a smoker, I suppose. And my son's a vapor. He uses a vape. So yeah, so it was quite nice. We did have a little chat at least, but it's just funny the way he said, "I'm so bored, I think I'll have to sit down here and talk to you." Thank you, son. Anyway, then I thought, right, I'm just going to go. I said, look, I'm going to go to bed and then it'll all be on in the morning. And I went off to bed. I was absolutely shattered from all that walking. Honestly, my old body's not used to that anymore. I used to do a lot more walking. Though I did it. I was quite proud of myself, actually, because when he first suggested that to me, I was like, I can't do that. I can't walk all that way and back again. And he's going, oh, it's not far. Well, no, it's not far when you've got really long legs. And, you're under 30 years old and you're more fit and healthy. It wasn't that long. But anyway, I did it. And actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But it did knacker me out. It was on top of all the other things I'd done. So I went off up to bed then, and I was like having a lovely sleep. And then he woke me up, shouted through the door, knocked on the door and said the electricity's back on. So I think it must have come on. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that, came on here. But it's still not 100%. They're saying to people to try not to stay in, not to go out if possible. Use electricity wisely, etc. Yeah, we need for prepping for me, David. I need a supermarket, just to last a week, because and I have to hide it everywhere, and just sort of bring it out when I have to. But yeah, so what happened? So then, of course, so we were talking as we were sat talking about what could possibly have happened. So what the government are saying is it was what was it, a rare atmospheric weather condition? Absolute rubbish. We don't believe that. And even my son, who doesn't believe in conspiracy theories, that was a cyber attack. I think definitely somebody's deliberately. It's like to try and prove that they could do it. And how could it happen? Now, so of course, Portugal, apparently they're dependent on Spain for their electricity. So that's why it's happened in Portugal. But for a country like Spain, who also has a lot of solar power, I just can't believe that it ever happened. Now, they're saying it was this strange weather event. And then I was watching somebody on Sky News was saying it was because Spain uses a lot of solar power and wind power and stuff. It's not as reliable as a normal grid, but I don't know if that's true. Well, do you know, Julie? Well, the buses were running here. The buses carried on running. That was something that was strange. We saw a few buses. Yeah, oh God, it was a surreal situation. That's what we thought in the beginning, David, that someone had broken a cable. That's happened before, where people building have gone through a cable. That's happened with both the electric and the water. But of course, this was throughout Spain. But it's quite scary, isn't it, that something, a whole country could be brought to a halt. Anyway, I'm going to show you, let's see what Sky News had to say about it. And I'm going to show you some videos about things that had been going on. But it was very, very scary. Even today, I've got to say, it's really quiet everywhere. Very strange. Not used to, Spain's not a quiet country. There's normally all the neighbours are out and everything's very quiet. Let's have a look here. watch this video on Sky News. That's Madrid, of course. Yeah, I mean, they're still investigating it. But I can't see that it can be a weather event. Come on. You know, a weather event. It's never, ever happened before. Yeah, they said it's a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Whatever. So imagine if you'd been on a plane or... Oh, let's have a look. Can we see any more? There was a video that I wanted to watch, but... Let's see... There was they had a reporter, some poor Sky News reporter had to fly out to Spain. For God's sake. Oh, you wouldn't have got me on a plane, that's for sure. Imagine getting on a plane when there's electricity outages. Gosh, so this poor Sky News reporter, she'd been sent over to cover it, I suppose. And she was in Madrid. See, find a video. I want to see a video. Let's have a look at this. That's too long, perhaps. See this on. Oh, that's good. That was yesterday. Oh, I'm not sharing.
When that happens, we're so used to these things just working automatically, and when they go down, well, you can imagine what happens.
So what do we know then, Joe, of what actually the problem is and what's gone wrong?
At this point, nothing. At this point, I've not seen any reports that say what caused this massive power outage. We do know the scale of it. It seems really a large...
So bear in mind, all the traffic lights went off as well. You know, God knows where it was like in the centre of Madrid. It must have been absolute chaos. So all the traffic lights were off. The trains, just the thought of being on a train and it just stopping, or in the metro, awful.
Large amount of the Iberian Peninsula, as I say, of Spain and Portugal have been taken down.
And parts of France as well.
Parts of France as well, yeah. So Red Electrica is the state-owned network company. So they're not the electricity generators. They're the ones that get it from the power stations to your home, to your business. So they obviously have some stations, or they have power lines that go into France as well, it seems.
Yeah, so some parts of France were affected. Now, the thing is, of course, a lot of cars are electric these days. So imagine that, you know, I mean, I made the mistake of letting my car, that won't happen again, I'll tell you. I was literally due to get petrol today. That was on my list of, not today, yesterday. And of course, you know, I'd let my car go down too much. I shouldn't have done that. I won't be doing that again. But imagine if you had an electric car as well. Oh my God, people would be fighting over the petrol cars.
And so there's been a mild effect there. But I think the main effect, the biggest impact is, as I said, in Spain and Portugal.
And we've just been hearing that it could be 6 to 10 hours before services are restored. It's a long time
It is-
for people to
was a
be
long time.
without power, possibly needing to get home, or their phones might go down. I mean, this is going to have a massive effect.
It is. I mean,
Everyone's phone went down, and of course the ATMs weren't working. So again, it comes back to this thing. Thank God my son had cash, because I didn't have any cash. I wouldn't have even been able to get petrol. The only money I had, some money in PayPal, but I couldn't transfer it or get to it, and on my bank card and that. But you just couldn't. They weren't accepting them. Even in the supermarket, when I went there after power had been restored at sort of 9:30 in the evening, they were asking everyone asking us for efectivo, which is cash. So yeah, you must keep some cash around just in case. It's really it does make you feel very insecure. How quick that was! Literally a second. 1 minute I was sat there doing my class with my student. And then it was just boom. That was it, all gone till 4 o'clock the next morning. And that's a short time, really, when you think about it in the grand plan of things. But it was long enough, it was a nightmare. So imagine if it would have been a week before they got it sorted, or maybe they never got it. So, of course, everyone was going round saying, that frightened me as well. So when I was listening to my neighbours in the street, they were going, it's el fin del mundo, it's the end of the world. And I'm like, oh, God, don't say that. Because don't forget, at that point, earlier on, we didn't know what the reason was. All we knew was, and it was my son who said to me, because I said, oh, no, it'd be all right because the neighbours will get it sorted because they, And he said, well, maybe they don't know maybe we've been invaded. We wouldn't know, would we? We wouldn't know. Because if you've got no communications, you wouldn't. So I'm thinking of investing in a walkie-talkie now, because I'm thinking, and I give it my son's sake to work, because there's no communications. So, we could have been invaded. Nobody would know, would they, until your tank comes up your street, till the tank comes marching up your street. You wouldn't even know you'd been invaded. It's quite scary, actually, that our communications rely so heavily, how you could have a complete blackout like that.
Luckily, just kind of looking at the times now, luckily it seems that by the time it starts to get really dark, people will start to get the power back on. But as you say, all of our lives are completely dependent on this. And so for, people who are trying to go about their work, just live their normal life, it's going to be very, very difficult. As you mentioned before, though, of course, there are lots of places that have contingency backup. If you're a hospital, well, you're luckily not going to be affected with larger hospitals. But we saw recently, it's obviously a separate issue, a separate cause, but with the fire we had at substations that took out Heathrow Airport and the amount of time it took that to get back on and the disruption caused, and that's just one airport. So in terms of the disruption we're going to be seeing from an entire country losing power, well, that's going to be incredibly significant.
Joe, thank you so much. We're monitoring all of the wires and the information that's coming into us from the Iberian Peninsula. I can tell you Spain's National Security Council have just announced that they are going to meet to coordinate a response to these mass power outages. And we also know Spain's energy minister has been to talk to the suppliers of energy to see what's going on. So a big coordinated response happening in Spain.
Oh, yeah. So they've declared a state of emergency in Spain, which is what they did during COVID. And in Spain, when you have a state of emergency, literally the police and the army, etc., can do whatever they like. So if they wanted to come into your house, if they wanted to, it's the same during COVID, exactly the same. State of emergency means complete control of the organs of the state, and they didn't abuse that power during COVID, and I'm presuming they won't do it now. But the thing is, they bring in these states of emergencies just in case if it escalates to something more. If I suppose the thing is, if it went on, there could be unrest, literal unrest, couldn't there? Civil unrest, there could be looting, so I mean, it probably was some looting, I don't know, or there was hardly any lights on last night at all. It was very, very dark. It was very scary. You wouldn't have wanted, you forget, don't you? Just how dark it is. When there's no lights. And we noticed when we were coming home, there were pockets of lights. Some places had lights back on, and we were like looking at our village, like in the distance. So can we see any lights? And some parts of it did have their lights back on, but not our street when we got home. But it was so eerie, parking up. I couldn't even see, even with my lights on, just driving up my street, negotiating, the cars that parked on each side. It was so dark. It was so dark, even with my headlights on. I think you forget how dark it can be, what darkness means when there's not even light. You might be driving down a dark road sometimes, but there's normally lights in the distance somewhere, isn't there? But there wasn't. That blanket of darkness is really quite intimidating.
As well, the live page is up and running on the BBC News website, covering this extensively. Our team is talking to people on the ground who have been affected. I'm just seeing one here, Kirsty, a teacher in Madrid, who's talking about how devastating it is for many of the children there because they don't have 5G and they can't charge their
Could you imagine? I mean, at least now Jack's older and he understands. Oh my God, if that would have been Jack when he was like 15 or something. If you imagine having a young teenager and their 5G goes off, oh my God, and they can't play their Xbox, and there'd be talk about problems. Do you know what I mean? It'd be a nightmare, wouldn't it? Anyway, apparently a lot of schools are open again today. But it's funny. So they said they're opening the school, like in my village, they're opening the school, but there's no classes. So I suppose that's just that I suppose if parents are working or whatever, their children can come into school. They'll probably just have free activities or whatever, but there are no classes in most schools. Let me just have a look at this now. I was looking for the. Let's have a look at this. So imagine being stuck in the metro in Madrid. Gosh. Well, oh my God, this is my worst nightmare. All those people and being stuck there and you can't get out. I was worried last night as I was coming out of the supermarket. I thought, God, what if they bring if they close the gates and I can't get out? I didn't mind if I was stuck in a supermarket, it wouldn't be so bad. But once I'd come out of the supermarket and was in the parking, I just wanted to get out, because it's like that underground parking. Just get out of there before they bring the gates down. It's all those things. I thought, God, oh my God. Oh. That is just my worst nightmare come true. I don't like Subway at the best of times. Oh, God. Every day I do thank God that I don't have to do this. So many people that have to do that to get to work, don't they? And not only in Madrid, obviously, but in London or any big city. That's how people get around. Thank God I don't have to do that. Oh. Dear me. Oh, I think that this was a video that was on. I wanted to watch this. Yeah, the outage happened in 5 seconds. Yeah, there's a feeling of shock over the speed with which power was lost yesterday. Just instant. The entire Iberian Peninsula was brought down by a power outage that happened in just 5 seconds. And some 60% of the country's national supply here in Spain went. Traffic lights not working, metro station being down. We even had people in Barcelona queuing up to get battery-operated videos. Yeah, well, don't be like me. Make sure you've got batteries in. So I've got a battery-operated radio, radio, but I couldn't get it to work. So 90% of Spain's electricity has started to come back on this morning, and 80% of Spanish metro lines are back up and running. Well, you know, I suppose at the end of the day, people have to go on that metro, but you won't be going on it unless you really had to, would you? You'd avoid it like the plague, because, you know, I still don't think, you know, no, people don't feel confident that it might not just happen again. God. Oh, but it was chaos in these. It was enough chaos, you know. In my little problems that I had, they're small problems in the grand, small problems in the great scheme of things. Hi, Ange. Yeah, it is scary how dependent we are. We've got, you know, luckily I did have candles in, and we used our phones as, you know, the torch on your phone as lights. But of course, you don't want to run your phone down because you can't charge it back up again. So I suppose it'd be a good idea, wouldn't it, to get always keep one. Can you, those phone charger bank things? I suppose it'd be a good idea to have one of them. It's like, it really takes somewhat, you know. The trouble is now I'll probably settle back into complacency and I probably won't organise any of this. But, you know, I know what I should be doing. You know, with the grab bag and keeping some cash around and, you know, making sure there's food in that doesn't need cooking. Because, of course, that's the other thing is you can't cook anything. So you've got to have food in, you know, the conserved food, etc. Yeah, and of course the lifts weren't working. So let me see. I had, you know, as usual, I had some videos ready, but let's have a look. The Guardia Civil had issued some videos of, you know, they were carrying people up the stairs. You know, who couldn't, because the lifts weren't working. So a lot of Spanish people live in these high-rise flats, you know, and they're dependent on their lifts. Here it is. Let's have a look at this. Oh, it's so sweet. Yeah, what if you couldn't get up the stairs and the lift broke? There's so many little things that you don't even think about with your able body. So that's in the hospital. Oh. I thought you said hospitals had generators, but anyway, maybe the generator, you know, I would imagine in a hospital, I suppose the generator is going to keep like God, imagine if you were in the middle of an operation. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, excuse me for taking the Lord's name in vain. But all these things that you think of, just, you know, so my trauma was the petrol. If I would have had petrol yesterday, it wouldn't have been a traumatic day, really. My whole trauma yesterday was, oh my God, I'm going to run out of petrol. What's going to happen then? And so that's what, if I would have had my car at least, you know, half full of petrol, it wouldn't have been so traumatic. But it was all about, God, where am I going to get the petrol from? But yeah, there are so many worse things, of course, that people had to suffer than running out of petrol. Now, the other thing that I noticed when I was walking up to the gas station to see if it was open, how terrible the pavements are in Spain. I always knew the pavements are terrible in Spain, but they really are in some areas. Not in my pueblo, actually, but in this particular area where I was, you couldn't be disabled there. Well, you couldn't live there if you were disabled, let's put it that way, because you couldn't get a wheelchair on the pavements. The pavement edges were like drops off cliffs, I had to hold on to a lamppost to step down because it was so high, and the dogs were like pulling me over. And the ramps, like every now and again, there'll be a ramp that's supposedly for wheelchairs, I suppose, or pushchairs as well, and that would be a nightmare to negotiate along that. But they're like bloody ski slopes. Do you know what I mean? They're not gentle inclines, like, you know, to push a wheelchair down, or to, you know, if you were propelling the wheelchair yourself. And there was potholes everywhere. It was absolutely lethal. Even for me, who I, you know, at the moment, I would describe myself as able-bodied. I might be a little bit, you know, got a few problems with arthritis here and there, but, you know, I am able-bodied. And it was a nightmare, you know, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, God, if I was disabled in any way, maybe on a Zimmer frame, maybe a walking stick, or in a wheelchair, would be impossible. Absolutely impossible. It's terrible. It's a disgrace, you know, that people are excluded in that way. They can't even walk down the street, you know, because you'd have to go in the road. Like if you were on a mobility scooter, and of course there's a lot of those other scooters around now, those the scooters that the young people sort of go, well, not only the young people, a lot of people go on them in that area. But yeah, it's like it's lethal. Do you know, you literally are taking your life in your hands. And there weren't proper pavements either. In some parts you were actually had to walk on the road, so that's the only place you could get through. Just it was that, and so that made the whole, like, if it would have been a walk, you know, it was just nice and flat, and you didn't have to be looking where you were going all the time, because I was just kept thinking, God, I'm going to go down one of these potholes, I'm going to end up flat on my face. I won't be able to get an ambulance. You know, my son always says I'm dramatic. Maybe I am a little bit, but these are things that happen to people. You know, I was thinking, God, I'm going to go flat on my face here. So yeah, it's when you see things through, like, and if you were blind, for example, with a guide dog, because a guide dog can't show you where a pothole is, can they? I don't know how that would work. So you'd be just walking along with a guy. You very rarely see that, and I'm not surprised why. Probably people are terrified of going out if they're blind, even if they have got a guide dog, because you'd end up down one of these potholes. You know, I don't see how a guide dog could stop you going down one of them, really. I don't know how it works, but, you know, how, because they could walk through. When I say potholes, you know, obviously they're not like a great big hole, but it would make you trip up, and maybe the dog would walk through it okay, and then you would just, so you know what? Hi, Shah. You weren't born till 83. Well, you won't remember then the winter of discontent or whatever it was. You won't remember the 3-day week. I mean, I only just remember it, but I do remember it. I do remember it because we used to sit and, as I say, play get. Oh, so in the end, my son was even doing shadow things on the wall. You know, apart from the fact he was forced to speak to me, but also he was doing, like, you know, shadow images on the wall. We were making shadow images. Hi, my angel. What a day. What a day. And yeah, it still feels. Oh, look, let's have a look at this. So this is an evacuation train. Oh. So these trains were just stopped literally in their tracks. I mean, pardon the pun, but that was it. Stopped in their tracks. And people had to get out and walk. Oh, God. Crikey. Well, what they say is, today we took 280 passengers from a train in Leon, evacuated them with ambulances and patrols. God. what's happened here? So this is so. Let's Hacido Desco. All right, so they were accompanying here a lorry to take, that was taking fuel. I bet they all got called in on the day off with the police. They're just accompanying that to make sure it gets it to its destination. Okay. So 480 people that were travelling in a train that stopped in Zamora have been evacuated with all their luggage. 480 people. Crikey. I mean, so this was going on all over the country. Oh. Thing is, you'd get on your train, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking you don't have to get off it again until you get to your destination, and then it just stops in the middle of nowhere. Oh. That was a busy day for the police yesterday, wasn't it? They're helping this woman to get up. I think I should have rang the police and got them to lift me up my stairs. I'm like, oh, young man. Oh, sorry, I'm making a joke of it. It's not funny, but I expect she quite enjoyed having all those policemen around her. And then I God, look at their guns. Their guns always frighten me. Oh. Yeah, none of the lifts were working. So, most Spanish people live in high-rise apartment. It's like, oh, look, it's coming up with some of my videos on there. I don't know why. I'm putting the guardians of it. Let's see what Pedro Sanchez has had to say about it all. So Pedro Sanchez is our leader. Oh, look, he's trending, of course. He's popular with some Spanish people, but not all. There's no point in me really playing his videos because they're all in Spanish, obviously. Sometimes he does them in English. So he said an hour ago that after an intense night, we've managed to re-establish 99.95% of the grid, if you like, and 100% of the substations of the transport networks are fixed. So they've dealt with it quite quickly, really, if you think about it. So 9 hours ago, he said 50% had been. This is our leader, our president. I think he's a really good president, but a lot of people can't stand him. That's just the way it is, isn't it, with politics? You'll always get some that like you, some don't like you. Let me just have it. This will be in Spanish.
Se ha restablecido ya casi el 50% del suministro eléctrico nacional. Prácticamente.
Again, this reminds me of COVID because he would come on and do his talks every Saturday, I think it was. And he would always talk like that, very simple, just the Spanish flag, the European flag. He wouldn't have other people on with him. He took responsibility for everything. He told us very clearly what we had to do, blah, de, blah, de, blah. So personally, I think he's a really good president, but not everybody does. That's the way it is, isn't it, with politics? But it's still, so they're still saying they don't know what caused it. So concretely, what caused it. So we probably have to wait for that. Hi, Maria. Yes, he is handsome. He's very handsome, isn't he? And honestly, the thing about Pedro Sanchez that I like about him is, I know a lot of people don't like him, but it's just, he's a 50-50 in Spain. Do you know what I mean? You've probably got 50% of people think he's brilliant like me, and then 50% think he's corrupt and he's this, that, and the other, because he has been in power for a long time, but he's been voted into power. You know, he's not, you know, we've had elections, but they're always sort of very, he's never really won a landslide victory. You know, his wins in his elections have always been just, or he's had to make a coalition with other parties. So he's not like overwhelmingly popular, like, you know, where he gets 75% of the vote. He probably gets about 50% of the vote or even less, and has to make it up with a coalition. But I personally, they can complain all they want, but the Spanish economy is doing better than most economies. And, you know, Spain has, you know, is doing well. So, you know, if he's responsible for the bad things that happen in Spain, he's got to be responsible for the good things as well. And he does take responsibility, I think. That's what I always liked about him during COVID. He took responsibility himself. He didn't have, you know, he wasn't, you know, don't forget, so I was watching the British press conferences that were crappo, weren't they? Where, you know, you didn't know what you were supposed to be doing. And then watching him, who was very clear, whether you agreed with him, didn't agree with him, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. He was just clear. So it's just, this is what you've got to do. So it wasn't like, oh, well, you can wear a mask if you want to, but not if you don't, or you can do this, or you can, you know, you could, it was just, this is it. So people like to know where they are, don't they? I think, especially when there's something scary going on like that. So he was very calming, you know, it was like the food chain is no problem. There's no problem with food. You'll always be able to get food in the supermarket, you know, and it was like that. You know, there was no problems of supply or anything like that. So, and we did have electricity. Oh, could you imagine if while it was like lockdown, then the electricity went off as well? Oh my God, that just about finish it off, wouldn't it? If you had, you know, people would be hysterical, wouldn't they? It is a very scary feeling. So I feel like yesterday, so today, I mean, it won't last, I know that, but today, every time I'm even turning a light on, I'm saying, thank you, God. You know, that's how I feel today. It's like literally, I'm going to go and make some, will it be lunch or breakfast? Because I haven't had any lunch or breakfast. It's too early for lunch, but too late. So I'm going to make some brunch shortly. And I'll be thanking God for that. You know, it's like, it's only when you can't do these simple things. Even just putting the hairdryer on and that. So I put the hairdryer on and I'm like going to do something with my hair. It's like, oh shit. No, the hairdryer's obviously not working. Thinking, oh, I'll put the telly on and see what the news is. Obviously the telly wasn't coming on. Just crackers, little tiny things that you don't even think about, that you take so much for granted. We shouldn't take things for granted, should we? Because there are parts of the world as well that don't have what we have. So anyway, so that was my day yesterday. I hope you had a better day. I hope I'm going to have a better day today. I'm sure it's already a better day just because I've been able to do a live. Now, of course, other news, you know, yesterday, the trial started of the woman that poisoned her family with mushrooms. And we've covered that case. I was going to sort of cover that. I've also got the Prince Andrew interview that I want to react to. just so many things. I might be back later on this afternoon with one of those, or tonight, or whatever. We'll see what happens, provided the electricity's still on. But yeah, there's as always so many things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I couldn't, and now it's all been sort of overrode a bit by this. But anyway, and I just want to say thank you. I got quite a lot of emails when I finally got my emails back on this morning. I got, quite a few emails, people saying, "Oh, I hope you're okay. Has it affected you? Blah, de, blah, de, blah." So thank you and quite a few comments and that on my thing talking about it. So thank you for that. Thank you for thinking of me. So yeah, anyway, back to normal today, whatever that is, whatever normal is, we're back to it today. But I won't be doing any walking today, put it that way. Today's the day. I'm not doing any walking. I did enough. I must have walked in total, all the walking that I did this day. I must have walked for 3 hours. That's too much. I'm too old to do. I'm too old. How too old? So today I'm like, oh God, if you could see it, I'm like walking around like, oh God, everything. All my bones are aching. Every bone that can ache is aching. Anyway, there you go. Oh, Angel, sorry. Listen, you didn't want that job anyway, did you? You'll get a better job. You'll get a better job than that. I'll see you really soon in the next video. Let's hope that electric power thing. Now, when they're still saying it's this weather thing. Personally, I don't believe it. I don't believe it's a weather thing. Don't believe it for a minute. I think it's something else, but we'll never know. We'll never get to find out. The problem is, the point we've all got to now, I think, with governments in general, is we don't believe anything they say anyway. So even if it was a weather thing, we won't believe it. Maybe if they said, it was a cyber attack, maybe then we'd all be saying, but it wasn't a cyber attack, it was probably a weather thing. We've got to that point where we just believe the opposite, don't we? Because you just don't, governments tell us what they want us to know, don't they? And they give us the information they want us to have. And it's not always, who knows what the absolute truth is, yeah. Okay. I'll see you really soon in the next video. Do you know what I'm going to play on the way out to make me smile and hopefully to make you smile? Is I think I'm going to play this nice little song that somebody made for me, because it does. God, I was singing it to myself all day yesterday. And I was, because I couldn't play it, but yeah, let's have a little look at it. Oh, hang on. Let me set it. I'll set it as the... Okay, I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, as always, may your God go with you. Bye.
Vicky Maria, so bright, so bright. Your YouTube world is the purest gold. With every video fresh and new, you light my days with joy so true. Oh, Vicky Maria, your voice, your charm, your spark, your flair, keep me glued beyond compare. From laughs to lessons, all you share. No other channel shines so rare. The comments buzz, your fans agree. We're all here for your energy. A loyal crowd, you're ahead of the game. So here's my thanks from me to you, for all the fun and wisdom too. Marie, you've won the game. The comments buzz, your fans agree. We're all here for your energy. A loyal crowd, you're ahead of the game. So here's my thanks from me to you for all the fun and wisdom to keep creating. Stay the same, Vicky Marie, you won the game. Keep creating, stay the same. Vicky Marie, you've won the game.